Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today's episode 118, and we're going to be interviewing Joseph W. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Happy to be doing this right now. Had a good chat beforehand.
Yeah, same.
All right. So let's dive in and get started here and tell me about your childhood and growing up.
Yeah, I feel that I've had a pretty basic or traditional childhood. I was born in '88, so around that time is when video games started coming out. I was a huge gamer through most of my life, and but I guess I'm skipping a little bit. But our family, we moved around quite a bit. We lived in, I think, 5 different states. And then that kind of brings up the video game thing because for me, I think because of the move-in and the isolating behavior, I've been a loner for most of my childhood and most of my life too. And I think that's definitely contributed to my addiction. But of course, I'm sure we'll get to that. But I mean, our parents. I have a younger sibling, and our parents provided us with everything. I mean, there was no any sort of abuse or anything like that, or they supported us through whatever endeavors that we wanted to do, whether it was soccer or karate. So pretty traditional in that sense. But yeah, I never really had too many friends growing up. I mean, the occasional kid here or there, but it's just so hard to connect and get roots growing with childhood friends when you live there for 4-6 years and then move to a different state. So that made things a little difficult, but yeah, my childhood was pretty good for the most part.
That's good. Do you have any memories of anything that was showing signs of addiction? Was it just the gaming? Would you consider that a sign of your addiction to come?
I would say yes, most likely. And I'm actually glad that you asked that, Jim. Because when I was in first grade, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And as a result, they put me on medication. They had put me on Ritalin, which I'm sure you're aware of as a pretty strong stimulant. And I do have faint memories of kind of getting, I guess, high essentially, or at least feeling those effects. And then also having some effects from the medicine. Yeah.
Okay.
And then having some effects similar to a come down later in the evening when I would assume it when it started wearing off, I'd get very restless. So the games definitely addicting in of themselves, but I guess I was exposed to kind of substances at a young age as well with the Ritalin.
Yeah, that's a big deal for such a young kid.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. It's strong stuff.
It is. It absolutely is. Do you think that it's something that you needed back then?
Yeah, honestly, I guess it's hard to say, especially I'm really bad sometimes getting stuck in the what ifs, so I try not to think about that stuff like that too much, but it's really hard to say. I think it was ultimately for the best. Because I did do pretty well in school, and I don't think I would have been able to do that if I wasn't medicated. But again, I mean, there's a million other what ifs. Maybe I would have done better in school, or maybe I would have, made more friends. But I think my parents made the right decision at the time to get me on medication because I can say for sure I definitely excelled in school. So that, at least it didn't really mess up my childhood that much, I should say.
When you say that much, what would you consider the negative things? Because obviously, like you said, there was some positive things that came along with it also.
I guess the two negatives is kind of that young introduction or that early introduction to substances. And I know it was under the purpose of medicating for treating mental illness, but still, it's a pretty powerful substance. And I think that might have played into my desire and tendency to want to alter my consciousness later in my life. So I would say that's the first thing. And then the second thing, like I said, is just kind of that coming down. I would get really depressed in the evenings. When I kind of came down off the medication, I would just pace around my house for most of the evening. I wouldn't say I had direct suicidal thoughts, but just thought a lot about death, and just a lot of apathy and anhedonia, yeah, really just bombing out the end. So, but I guess for them, like, besides those two things, I wouldn't say it's, screwed up my life or childhood or really altered it significantly. But I do think those two things weren't the best things, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. So what was school like? How'd you do in school?
School was pretty good. It's really hard to say. I'm trying to think. It's really hard to say how my exact, like, the specifics before high school. But I believe I was on honor roll for many of the years. From like first grade to all through middle school. I'm trying to think if I won any other awards or any accomplishments. Nothing comes to mind. So I kind of did, and I'm like this to this day, but I kind of did the bare minimum. I wasn't much of an overachiever. Is I would just go to school, do the assignments, take the test, and then that's it. And fortunately, I have a pretty decent ability to pick up on things pretty quickly. So for me, just being in the classroom and listening and to the teacher talk and just visually seeing the materials or whatever the case was, I was usually enough to help me do pretty well in school. And I did well in school up until about 11th and 12th grade, which is when I started getting into substances. But other than those 2 years, I mean, mostly A's and maybe like a few B's, but never nothing below a B.
That's great.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I'm trying to think too, like that's all that really comes to mind. I will say I hated and I still hate writing papers, but other than that, I mean, yeah, school was pretty good for me.
That's good. So you had a good group of friends?
There's a few kids that come to mind, but one thing I missed out on in my childhood was having that friend from, like, being in high school and having that friend or those friends from like first grade, because we moved states so much, and it was really hard to get a good, especially as I got older. People had already formed their kind of cliques and social groups, so it was much more difficult to get into that. And especially as time went on, kids were developing their social skills, whereas with me, I was mostly isolated, quite a bit of a loner, so I didn't really work on my social skills. So that, I think, it was a combination of a little bit of all of that, which made it more difficult to make and maintain friends as I gotten older. So yeah, I mean, there's a few faint images or people that come to mind, but it's like I can't even put a name on them or any specifics. But I just remember as a kid, at least playing with some of the other kids and having some sort of friendship. But I don't think I've ever really had a really close, strong friends that I had a long history with, because of the games and moving around so much.
That must suck for your child, move around so much like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but and I guess I always get asked, what was your family in the military? And no, but my dad, we did move around a lot because of his line of work. He was into medical equipment sales, and he would just find better positions or better companies to work with, and it would move us around. But yeah, being bounced around like that definitely made it much more difficult to be established. I guess it was kind of, at least the good thing is if you've ever done anything embarrassing as a kid, like maybe pooped your pants or something in first grade, if you move, people aren't gonna know about that. You don't have that history. So I guess that's a good thing about it.
There you go. Always see the good in something, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
So what was it like as you got older, like high school and graduation? I'm assuming you graduated because you said you were a good student.
Yeah, so I did. I did end up graduating high school. I did go to a university afterward, but um, junior year, starting to, and then senior year especially, my grades really slipped. I mean, I got mostly C's and I think like a D in senior year. So it
You're
really
talking about still high school?
high school, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
And so I was already accepted into the school. So I definitely had some major senioritis, but I had been abusing cough syrup at that time too. And so I just did not care at all for school or really have the mental faculties to do it. So because I've heard stories of people goofing around or not getting such good grades, their last few years of high school and their university admission being revoked. So fortunately that didn't happen. But yeah, the last 2 years of high school, I goofed off and I just did not excel as a student. But I was kind of a little more social in my last few years in high school, finally starting to get out of that introversion and stop being so much of a loner. But yeah, the last few years I kind of scraped by, so that's not very good.
Yeah. So you went to university afterwards. How's that? So actually, real quick, at any point, were there any signs that you think you now see that was leading up to your addiction at those ages?
Oh, that's really great question. No, not really. And if anything, I stayed on the ADHD medication. We've tried several medications up until high school, and the very last one of them was Strattera. And I was just like, I don't want any more meds. So I stopped taking them, and I was able to do fine. And I know with Strattera especially, I mean, it's not a stimulant like it's not an amphetamine like thing like Ritalin or Adderall is, but still, at least I didn't have a desire to take meds. And then there's nothing that really pointed towards a desire to until I smoked marijuana for the first time in junior year. Is when, because like growing up with all the dare and everything like that, I mean, we're told, drugs are horrible. And if you take one puff of marijuana, you're going to end up homeless. Obviously exaggerating a bit, but I did have a good amount of fear or just carefulness with using substances. I was pretty clean cut. But then, yeah, junior year, I smoked weed for the first time, and I was just like, dude, this is freaking awesome. And then that's when things kind of went downhill. I started researching more into, recreational drugs, and I found out about the cough syrup, and started abusing that. So kind of there was nothing.
What do you just drink a lot of cough syrup, I'm assuming?
Yeah, well, it was mostly the syrup, but they did also sell gel caps. Hopefully you don't mind me talking about too much of this. I don't know if there's like trigger and stuff.
No, talk about what you need to talk about.
But yeah, I would either use syrup or the cough gels. It's just plain old Robitussin that you can buy in a grocery store. The chemical in there, dextromethorphan, can be a hallucinogenic and a pretty strong dissociative. And the first few times I did that after I had been smoking weed for like 6 months, I fell in love with that too, because it was just amazing that you can consume these substances and alter your consciousness so much. So yeah, so syrup and gel caps, whatever way I can get it. And what's the cheapest to buy and the easiest to get is usually what I went for.
Wow. What do they call that? robo tripping? Is that it?
Yeah, robo tripping. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that term before, robo tripping. So how was life after you graduated high school? What'd you do with your life at that point?
So at that point, after I'd been smoking weed for a little bit, I turned into a massive stoner. I just had really low ambitions, and I'm not blaming the marijuana. It's definitely my actions. But yeah, I just totally became a stoner. I did end up going to university, but I really didn't do very well in university, like any of the years, because I just continued to smoke marijuana. Um, I hadn't really been drinking too much at that point. I really didn't start drinking consistently and eventually heavily until I turned 21. But smoked a ton of weed through university. I'd go to class. I'd go take an exam high as hell, and fortunately, I was able to graduate. I mean, not with a great GPA, but I did graduate. But yeah, I just dicked around so much in university, just so much weed, and I still did concert off and on during that time as well.
What did you do once you graduated? Well, actually, at any point when you were young, did you think you had a problem or you were just still good to go and partying?
Um, yeah, that's another really great question. I honestly, uh, I know it's cliche, but I was more of the functioning addict or functioning
Yeah.
alcoholic. So for me, I like my mindset for a long time was if I can still, work or go to school or both, or just attend to whatever obligations I have in my life, um, as long as that's not interfered with, I don't have a problem. And of course, that's not quite accurate, but I mean, I still knew I was probably doing more, smoking more weed than I should have been doing, drinking or, robo tripping a lot more than I should have been doing. So I did know it was definitely already in excess, but I wouldn't say it was like I felt like it was immediately a problem. It's just something like, hey, maybe this isn't good for your brain or your body. You should probably stop or slow down. But I never really made any active, conceited efforts to do that. 'Cause like I said, for me, it wasn't problematic at the time, or at least I didn't perceive it as problematic.
So you continued on with that stuff after you graduated high school. What did you do with your life? Did you go out and get a job? Were you being just a stoner and sitting around your parents' house? What was the deal?
Well, so surprisingly, I guess I'll try to leave out some specific details, but um, so I did graduate with a bachelor's of science in biology. I was always interested in medicine and science, but there's really not much you can do with an undergraduate degree in biology with a low ass GPA. I mean, it's not like I could have gotten into medical school or anything like that. So I was just like, oh shit, what do I do now? So I did eventually move back down to live with my parents again. And I was going to go to school to become an x-ray tech, but I ended up pursuing a degree in registered nursing. So I did 3 years of additional school, and then I graduated and became a registered nurse. So,
Oh, that's
but
amazing.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I've lost my license because of my substance use, but that's something I can always try to pursue in the future. I just have to jump through a lot of hoops. But yeah, so I mean, I was able to maintain pretty well, but yeah, I still pretty heavily used substances. I mean, throughout pretty much my whole adult life.
So what kind of gigs did you get as far as work? What kind of jobs?
So when I got into nursing school and for a while, I had a lot of TV shows like glamorize the emergency department, fast paced action and super cool. So that's what my intentions were. But then we had a quarter that was in psychiatric behavioral health nursing, and I fell in love with it. I immediately fell in love with it. It was amazing. And we were on the acute unit, so people that would, were just very ill, whether it be with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, having delusions or hallucinations, just super agitated. But I really enjoyed it. So when I graduated, I spent my 3.5 years of nursing mostly in behavioral health setting, and towards the very last bit, it was on a detox unit. So it's kind of funny. It's I've struggled with mental illness and substance use for a lot of my life, and I was drawn to that, so I ended up working in that field as well.
Yeah, it's interesting how our brain works. So how did you like it?
I liked it for the most part. I think after a while, it started. I wouldn't say it was like traumatic to the point of like PTSD, but I had experienced and witnessed a lot of terrible things. And I've always worked on the acute units. So I've had to put people, of course, not just by myself, but with the whole team, put patients into 4-point restraints or 2-point restraints, give them intramuscular injections if they wouldn't take the oral medication. I've seen blood, feces, urine. It just started to wear me down after a while. Burnout is a pretty serious thing in nursing in general, but especially psychiatric. So it started, like, I really enjoyed it, but there's a while after, or kind of into it, where I wasn't hating it, but I wasn't enjoying it as much. And it was causing me a considerable amount of anxiety. And then so I self-medicated with substance use. And then my drug of choice, at least for doing the self-medication, was nitrous oxide laughing gas. Because that for me helped the most. But that's the one thing that led to the most problems in my life over the past like 3 years or so now.
Was it something that you can only access at work, or are you able had like the laughing gas? Is there like a way of taking some home with you? Like, I don't know how that works.
In most hospitals or facilities, they don't have laughing gas. I guess in the operating room they probably do. At a dentist's office they do, but I can at least proudly state one thing I'm really happy about with myself, because I've done some really shitty things, but I've never stolen medications from work, whether that be from a patient's own personal supply, or just doing my med pass and being like, oh, Ativan, I'm gonna take this for myself. Because I've had all sorts of narcotics. I can't even recall the amount of stuff I've touched. That's gone through my hands, all sorts of benzos and stuff. So I had access to medications. And that does happen sometimes with nurses, is that they will divert meds, but I never did. I got my laughing gas. You can find it in a lot of different places, a smoke shop or a head shop. You can find it, buy it online. They sell it in sex shops, restaurant suppliers, like where you go and buy like bulk things. Like, let's say you have a small coffee shop or something, you can buy bulk things. They sell nitrous oxide there because it's used in whipping cream. So yeah, it's legal. You have to be 18 or older to buy it, and of course I was well past 18 at that point. And no one but bats an eye, and I just it got to a point where I was eventually just buying so much of it. I ended up experiencing psychosis. I had nerve damage to the point where I couldn't walk. It just totally screwed things up. So that's what the scary part is it's legal, and it's just easily accessible.
How long did it take before it messed you up? Was it after like Like how many years or months did it start to show your wear and tear?
Um, well, I had been exposed to it and I've done it even during nursing school. I hate to say it, but not as heavily as I eventually did, kind of more off and on. Because for me, it was a good way to escape reality and my problems instead of confronting them head on. And the afterglow that it session of doing nitrous, the afterglow of reducing anxiety and depression, up to days or even a few weeks after use, that definitely drove a lot of the use. But it wasn't until August of 2019 is when I started abusing it pretty much daily, and sometimes even multiple times a day. I was buying pretty large quantities, and at that point is when it really became problematic, because even if it had been a few days after my use, I was still in a elevated mood, like a manic state, and eventually that mania progressed to psychosis and led to some bizarre behaviors. And that's the reason why I lost my job and then was reported to the board of nursing. And then I just abused heavier and heavier amounts. I mean, I was doing 1,000 or more cartridges a day, every day.
Real quick, what kind of bizarre behaviors did you do?
Well, a lot of it was paranoia. And so I guess one thing, I couldn't wrap my head around how it was possible to do so much and still be alive. So I had a lot of like delusions that I was like in between like life and death, or like I was in this extra dimension. And the paranoia came in because I thought people wanted to kidnap me because I knew like some secret information. Yeah, and like taping up my the cameras and microphones on my cell phones. I mean, just stuff like that. I'm trying to think of other specifics, but it's like it's just so bizarre. It's like it's like my mind just doesn't want to remember all the madness I went through, but stuff like that. A lot of it was paranoia driven.
So how did you come to realize that that wasn't actually happening? Like, if you had paranoia about, okay, someone's coming to get me, how did it happen where you realized nobody was coming to get you? Did the nurses or someone have to kind of come in and smack you back into reality?
No, well, there's so much to talk about with the experiences. What I will say is to backtrack a little bit. So December 18th of 2019 is when I lost my nursing job. I was put on a leave of absence, but it eventually led to me being fired. And a week after that, on Christmas Day, I had finished the amount of nitrous I bought earlier in the day, and I went out to the store to go get more. Well, I was coming up on an intersection, and it was turning yellow. And another example of the paranoia, I didn't want to stop because I thought if I stopped, I would be dragged down my car and kidnapped. So I sped through it, and I'm so fortunate to this day. I'm so glad that no one was killed or really injured. I almost hit two cop cars going through the intersection, and immediately afterwards, instead of just pulling to the side of the road and letting them come and be like, hey, sorry about that, that kind of fed more into the paranoia. So I sped down to the head shop and rushed inside. I didn't say a single word to the officers, because they finally caught up and were like, what the hell? And because I thought if I talked to them, they would steal my voice or something like that. And they eventually, I wasn't actively fighting them. I didn't punch them, but I wasn't cooperating with being detained. So they did tase me about 4 or 5 times. And then eventually dogpiled me, which broke 4 of my ribs. But I'm bringing that up because even after that, I was booked that evening and then released on my own recognizance. You would think like that would probably be a good rock bottom, losing your job and being arrested. But no, I just kept
Say,
using.
what was the actual thing you lost your job over? I don't think
Just because the behaviors, like I wasn't doing a lot of my charting. I had a patient that we admitted, and we have these admission packets, and where we ask them about, their history with psychiatric illness or meds and stuff like that. And I just because of my paranoia, I can't really think of any specifics, but I was just too paranoid to even like chart. So that's when, coworkers reported to the director of nursing, like, hey, Joe, he's not acting himself. And they brought me to the office, and I was honest with them what I had been doing. And they did a for-cause drug test too. And with nursing, you're not supposed to consume like marijuana, even, if you live in a state that it's legal. So I knew I was screwed anyways. I was going to test positive for THC. So there's a few different reasons why I lost my job, but kind of for the positive drug test and the bizarre behavior.
Gotcha. So back to the bizarre behavior. How do you come to recognize something like that?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were asking me. So just really quick, so I just kept using it daily, and there was no one that either was willing to or able to snap me into reality. I wasn't hospitalized at all. I think it was when I visited my parents and came back, and when the nerve damage came on, where I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand or walk, and I had to crawl around my apartment. That's when my use started to slow down, because I could only order so much. You could even order the stuff through Postmates and have it delivered to your house, and I was starting to run out of money. So that's when eventually, fortunately, the psychosis and paranoia was not permanent. After several weeks of abstinence, I finally came back to reality. And to more directly answer your question, during the whole time, I had some idea that my thinking and behaviors were probably not reality oriented. There's no logical reason to be thinking that or doing those things. But at the same time, it's difficult when it feels so real. That changes your whole perception. That, stuff becomes your reality. So it's just hard to discern what's real and what's not, until you finally come down from that psychosis, and then you look back and you're like, okay, yeah, no, that was total craziness. So it wasn't like any hospitalization or medication. It was just abstaining for several weeks is when the psychosis went away. So I kind of knew I was crazy the whole time, but it was just hard not to act on it because of just how my brain was affected during that time.
Yeah. So what was life like as far as outside of the drugs? Did you have a job? Were you able to hold it? Did you have a girlfriend or boyfriend? How was life while using?
Mostly normal. I've never really been much of the romantic type, and I guess that plays into the introversion and being a loner. I've had just very like a few short-term girlfriends, so that wasn't really my cup of tea. I only had a few close-ish friends in my life that would kind of rotate. So I never had a big social circle or like really had strong connections to them. It was just a few people in my life that, kind of came and went intermittently. But I was able to, both work and go to school. With nursing school, I was working full time. I was working like 40 to 45 hours a week, and doing all the nursing school. And not to be conceited, I didn't think it was that difficult, but there's some people that are like, I guess kind of recalling what I said earlier, fortunately I pick up on things relatively quickly. So for me, nursing school wasn't too bad, but a lot of people will advocate not working during nursing school if you can avoid it. So I was able to do, and I know it doesn't make me special, but I was able to do that and hold things together for the most part. And then once I graduated nursing school, I worked for, about 3.5 years, consistently until the psychosis happened. I lost my job and I lost my nursing license. So I kept mostly to myself, both in terms of friendships and relationships. And but I was able to kind of get shit done until I went crazy.
So let's talk about that. What do you mean when you went crazy? Let's explore that a little bit.
um,
All right.
well, yeah. So yeah, that was like around August, September of 2019. Where again, um, I had scared away pretty much all of the few friends I had. And I've only really been close to my parents in terms of family, and they've stuck with me through thick and thin. I love them to death. They're fantastic parents. But yeah, I scared off the few friendships I had, and then I lost the job because again, just that paranoia and that delusional thinking. Again, it's just so hard. It's just some of the stuff was so bizarre I can't even recall it. But I do know a lot of it was fear based. A lot of it was that paranoia and just worried about getting kidnapped or stolen, and just like being in this just weird place. Like it was like I was in my own reality that was in between like life and death. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could do it more justice, but it's really hard to elaborate on the craziness. But I guess I can't say, just losing touch with most of this reality. My perceptions were just so altered, and my grip of reality was so loose. It was hard to get things, to do things. And then, once I lost my job and was arrested and I lost my friendships, there was especially no one or nothing to hold me accountable, and that's why I just continued to abuse it so much until the only thing I hate to say that really stopped me was just the lack of money, from not working for several months and spending thousands of dollars on it. That's really the only thing that eventually had me stop the nitrous use. I mean, I lost that psychosis and paranoia, and I finally kind of knew what was real, and what I had experienced wasn't. And it's, I guess it's hard because even to this day I still wonder, is I just don't understand how it's humanly possible to consume that much. I mean, I should be dead 10 times over. And so I guess what I'm saying is the things that I've experienced, I wouldn't say are definitely real, but I can't say that they were 100% not real, if that makes any sense.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, talking about doing things and not realizing how you even survived. Like I never, and for some reason, it never just struck me as terrible. But I used to take Adderall and crush it, and also with Klonopin,
Oh,
and I mixed those together while drinking.
ooh,
Plus, I was on other antipsychotic medication because I'm bipolar. So I'm taking all these meds. I'm taking everything extra. I'm drinking. Going, it was just insane. I'm surprised. I remember there were times where my chest out of nowhere felt like there was an elephant stepping on me. And I think those were times I probably came close to relapsing, but made it through. Or I'm sorry, overdosing and made it through. Like, yeah, it was bad sometimes, but I made it through. Thank God I'm alive.
Yeah, no, same. And yeah, so I'm sure you've had some run-ins with mania, and so
Yeah.
you kind of know what it's like, even before it gets to the point of psychosis, at least for me, just that feeling of invincibility, that euphoria, and
Yep.
just that energy,
Yep.
I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can totally. That's how it started off, and then as I continued using it, it went into crazy mode. But there was a period where I was manic for a while as well.
Yeah. No, I've went into crazy mode also. I just have never landed myself in a psych ward. Not yet. Let's just say not yet. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, unfortunately, I've been a patient. I was gonna say I've seen the insides of many, but that's because I've worked in some. But yeah, I have had a few hospitalizations Fortunately not for psychosis, but for well, I guess it's not like it's any better, but for suicidal ideation or like preparing to attempt suicide. I have had some a few hospitalizations for that, but nothing due to the mania or psychosis because I was just so paranoid I wasn't going to turn myself into the hospital. So but with the suicidal stuff, that was just friends being concerned and calling the cops and them taking me to the emergency department. So
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, I've been inside of a few of those. It's not very fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who had you get there?
Just well, the first time I had overdosed. I mean, I've been a polysubstance abuser for most of my adult life as well, so it wasn't just one substance. Um, but the for the first hospitalization, I had consumed, I don't know, some sort of research benzo, a ton of alcohol, cough syrup, and I've even been doing some nitrous because I had to withdraw from the nursing school, a quarter of nursing school because my grades were so abysmal. And I had no intention. I did not want to be alive. And I mean, overdose is tricky because it's not, I guess it's, the fatality rate isn't as high as, hanging yourself or something like that, not to be too morbid, but so I kind of knew that I wasn't probably going to kill me, but either way, I was at that point where I just wanted to die. And so yeah, my friend came over, took me to the emergency department. I was blacked out due to all this, and most likely because it was the research benzo. I mean, I've had a lot of amnesia with different benzos, but I wasn't cooperative, so they ended up putting me on an involuntary hold, and I was in the hospital for about a week. But then the other two times that I've been in, it was voluntary, and it wasn't so much an attempt or preparation. It was more just kind of, hey, I want to kill myself, but and when people hear that, sometimes I shouldn't say they freak out, but it's a pretty serious thing. And then so 911 gets called, and then it's just like, hey, let's just bring you down to the emergency department. So so yeah, those have been my experiences with why I've gone into a psych unit.
Once you were in the psych unit, did you ever have a point where you ever said, you know what, I belong here? Was there ever a point where you thought you needed to get your life in a certain direction?
Yeah, I would say probably the prereqs for nursing schools when I started to realize I had a pretty serious problem with substance use and mental health as well. And every time I've been hospitalized, I guess I can't say for the first time with the attempt because I was blacked out. But I would assume I wasn't going to admit I had a problem. But any other time, yeah, it's like I definitely need to be here on the psych unit. But it wasn't until my arrest on Christmas Day that I eventually started seeking out substance treatment, like intensive outpatient, because I had been gotten accepted into mental health court, which means that if you go to treatment and you do everything you're supposed to do, those charges will eventually be dismissed. And unfortunately, I kept relapsing and I was terminated from mental health court. But yeah, so I knew I had a problem, but it wasn't until the past few years is when I had actually started receiving help for my substance use.
What took you so long to seek that help?
That's a really good question. I would say embarrassment, stubbornness, and I wasn't happy in my life, but I was able to again function enough to work as a nurse or whatever. So I guess I don't know, for the time being I thought living that double life was better than kind of because now being in active recovery, that's part of my identity now. That's just part of who I am. But when I was working as a nurse, I was, one part substance abuser and one part, nurse, or does separate lives. So I guess to seek treatment would be to maybe merge those a little bit too much together. Because I wouldn't say I've always been 100% transparent, but I've been pretty upfront with a lot of my experiences and struggles with substance use and mental health. But yeah, I guess there's a lot of reasons why I just didn't formally seek out treatment myself until I was essentially shouldn't say mandated. That's a strong word, but part of the requirements for mental health court is then when I sought out substance treatment. But I've been doing mental health treatment off and on for, the past 8 years or so. So I guess I was more accepting of help for my mental illness, and less accepting of treatment for my substance use. Even though, of course, they play off of each other with the dual diagnosis. So yeah, that's kind of why I didn't seek out treatment for a long time for substance.
How long have you been sober now?
I've been clean since March 30th of this year. So not, yeah, thank you. So not a huge stretch of time, but this is the longest I've been sober since, it's so hard to say, like probably around 20, 21 years old. So
yeah.
so this is completely foreign to me, but I've really been loving it. I live in a
How
shared
old are you right now?
I'm 33 years old.
Okay.
And I currently live in a shared sober living house, and that is it's a miracle. I'm so glad to be here, get along with all the guys. It's nice to have that environment to help hold me accountable, because that's my problem, is that accountability. So yeah, so I've been clean since March 30th. So I'm still a little baby in recovery, but I'm looking forward to hitting those milestones down the road.
That's great. So what is life like for you now?
Well, life for me now is a lot more satisfying, a lot more fulfilling. That's one thing that I really struggled with most of my life, and I think that's a big reason why I turned to substance use. Was I was just so unsatisfied in life, and just I felt I didn't have purpose. Yes, I was working as a nurse, and I know nurses are supposed to be caregivers, or like what a great profession, but it's like, yeah, but it's like I didn't identify with that. It was just, for me, it was just a job. I enjoyed working with patients, but for me, it was just like a 9 to 5, and it was just the same thing day in and day out. Go to work, come home, get fucked up, sleep, go to work, come home, get fucked up. So I never really had purpose, but I haven't been employed since I lost my job. I hate to say I've been unemployed for about 2.5 years now. But I've been trying to get myself more involved online in recovery stuff. I did start a blog. I have a YouTube channel, so I like to post. I treat the blog and the YouTube channel as essentially an online journal. So that way, because it helps me. I've always found journaling to be a pretty good coping skill. But if I had a notebook in my bedroom, I wouldn't consistently stay active in it. Whereas having it online kind of holds me more accountable to it. And, hopefully others can see it and, maybe help them, which is why, I really appreciate you having me on here. That's awesome. You're doing all of this. So yeah, I've been involved in that. I've been volunteering a few days a week at a local recovery cafe, and just kind of get myself more involved in the recovery community. My goal is to do peer support training. I have done some recovery coach training, so I would like to work as a recovery coach and or peer support, and just kind of use my experiences and what I know to help others, because addiction and mental illness are just terrible things, and it's a tough. I'd like to help people through their tough times, like people have helped me through my tough times. So yeah, so life has been really great. I know some people complain that sobriety is boring, or whatever, not exciting, but I think it's only boring if you make it boring. Just because you don't anymore doesn't mean you can't live a fun life. If anything, I've had more fun than I would just sitting at home getting drunk all day long, playing volleyball games with people in the recovery community or kickball games. So yeah, my life has been way better. Not easy, and it's not something that's ever, with recovery, that's something I need to work on every day. It's not going to be cured, and it's like I don't have to, work on my recovery anymore. It's something I have to consistently do. So I know there's going to be challenges, but it's just nice to feel more of as a person, with purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question for you is, do you have any advice for people watching and listening?
I'd say the thing that took me, I've heard it and I knew about it, but the thing that took me a long time to accept is the need for connection. It doesn't have to even necessarily be connection to other people in recovery, but to have a strong social support. I encourage your viewers, to check out the Rat Park experiment. That's a pretty cool experiment that with substance use and socialization in rats. Johan Hari has a great TED Talk where he says sobriety is not the opposite of addiction, it is connection. Or yeah. So yeah, just lean on people. It's okay to ask for help, and you might not be able to be upfront and honest with your addiction or struggles with everyone, but try and find those people that can help you, because when I'm having a tough day, sometimes it's nice to give a friend a call that knows what I've been going through, or if you have a sponsor or something like that, to go to meetings. So yeah, that's my word of advice, is just work on that connection. It's for me, it's been much more difficult to be successful in recovery by myself. It helps to have people around you that can support you.
Yeah. And I forgot to ask you this earlier. For what you do you have a website?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
What is it? Let's give me a sales pitch.
Well, it's just a blog for right now, and it's www confessionsfromadangerousmind.com. Kind of inspired for two reasons. Around the time where I had been becoming psychotic and delusions, I was having ideas of reference, which I thought, which is when you think songs or certain things have a secret message for you. So I was listening to Logic's album Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and just like doing a lot of nitrous to that and just going crazy. And I had that grandiosity and that paranoia that I had some special knowledge from a different realm or some shit, which is why people wanted to kidnap me. So that's where I came up with the Confessions from a Dangerous Mind, because I had this secret knowledge, and also just inspired by that rap album. But yeah, it's just I haven't posted in a while because I've been sick, but I just post, talk about my addiction, my recovery, and just whatever's on my mind. And same with the YouTube videos. I just, whatever comes to mind. It's just nice to talk about my experiences, and hopefully, it's mostly for myself, but hopefully, some people can see it and help them. Whether it's like inspiration, or it's like, okay, let's not do a bunch of nitrous and go crazy like that guy did.
Yeah.
Something of that sort. So yeah, it's nothing big. It's just kind of, yeah, a little bit of journaling essentially.
No, it's good you do something like that. It's good, like you said, to get it out, and by getting it out of your system, it helps you, but at the same time, it's gonna one day help somebody else when they read it. Bound to happen.
Yes, that's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's all we all do. That's all I do is, reach out to as many people as we could.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
So did you have anything else you wanted to add or throw in?
Um, I'm just thankful to be alive. I'm just thankful to be in recovery. I'm incredibly grateful for people like you that are providing a voice for people in recovery, because society is getting better at it, but I still feel that there's pretty strong stigma attached to addiction and mental illness, which is a shame because it can prevent some people from seeking treatment or reaching out and getting help from others. So I'm just grateful that you doing this podcast and just other people speaking about addiction. But no, yeah, I'm just thankful to be where I am in life, and I look forward to continuing down this path, and yeah, just one day at a time, right?
One day at a time. And being thankful is a good thing. It's good to have something to be thankful for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess that's it. We're going to wrap it up here. So for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you heard or saw, go below and give us a like. Also subscribe. You'll see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Hopefully you can check out one of our Zoom meetings. We do them every night at 6:30 Eastern time. Go to our Facebook page, check that out. You'll find the Zoom information for our Zoom meeting. And that's all I have for today. So until next time.